Hello, everyone, and thanks for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny. I'm here with Jonathan Nelson. Today, we're going to talk about DROW BORG,
Yes.
which I am really excited to hear that someone is making a variation of combining both the DROW and Mork Borg together, which seems like the perfect sandwich.
It does.
Um,
It is.
for anyone hearing about this for the first time, what is this project?
Yeah, DROW BORG is it was actually inspired by our Rise of the Drow after the fall, and I can get into that more later. But kind of during Rise of the Drow, our original flagship product, which is our most popular book, the story goes, the adventurers come down from the surface, and they start as first level adventurers, and they travel down into the Underdark, and find out that all these things are going awry. Some stuff's happening on the surface involving Drow. They kind of investigate, go down, find out some of the other races are also suffering from the Drow capturing and enslaving their people, or attacking their settlements or their cities or their trade caravans. And so eventually, as the adventure goes on, it's a mega adventure, so it goes on to like levels 1 through 20. But when they get near the end, these adventurers from the surface who nobody had heard of before essentially go in, take out the chosen of the spider goddess, and end up slaying her at the top of her tower. After which she transforms into her chosen of Nereneus, the spider goddess, great dark angel avatar form in the demi-plane of Venom, and the adventurers continue to follow her there in the layer. Basically, this is the plane that now the spider goddess exists in, at least in our world of Aventir. And they end up slaying her in her very, like, the chosen of the spider goddess in the plane of the spider goddess, right? And these are just adventures, right? So after that, the spider goddess kind of says, "Screw you guys! Like, the Drow you've lost all of my favor. I'm leaving. I'm walking away from you. You don't deserve my power." So all of a sudden, all of the high priestesses and whatnot in the Drow city, they all lose their divine powers. And whether someone wanted to place this in like the R.A. Salvatore series, like after I think it was was it War of the Spider Queen, where they at one point like they lose all these powers, right, and the divine powers are gone from the city. And in this instance, there's actually a spider temple shaped like a spider that gets up and literally walks out of the city, basically like a physical manifestation of saying, okay, you're done. We're done with you. The spider goddess has left you. And so all of these powers are gone. And the Drow find themselves in this position they've never been in before, where all of these other races now have this opportunity where the Drow have been weakened to such an extent that they can come in as a coalition and take out all of the main houses or the people that are resisting them and kind of take over the city. So during these events too, like when the demi-plane of Venom, at a certain point when this tower is collapsing, it's actually imploding. There's portals to the demi-plane of Venom in there, and these rifts open and kind of like bleed out all of this venom, which is like kind of picture like this neon green toxic mutating sludge. This toxic sludge kind of spills out into the city, and so as the city is attacked and everything starts to fall, the Drow find themselves kind of prisoners in their own city. They find themselves living underground, trying to survive anywhere they can, even deeper underneath the city itself, living in ruins of fallen houses, living in the ruins below Tolgorth Tower, which is the tower that fell, and becoming mutated by this venom that's leaked in from this other demi-plane and becoming strange. And the more that they travel, the more that they're adventuring, the higher the chance is that they're going to get these mutations, which can cause them to get some interesting things, like perhaps 8 spider eyes all of a sudden appearing all over their face, and now they can kind of see all around them, which gives them some kind of a boon, but also gives them a bane. Like maybe they're easily distracted because something back here is going on, and they're paying too much attention to that, and they get distracted by something. So like everything that has to do with DROW BORG as you're adventuring, you roll up a character, and it's done very much in kind of like the Mork Borg fashion. My gaming group for a long time, we've been playing like Mork Borg. We've been playing like Death in Space and some of these other kind of grim, dark OSR games. And so we wanted to kind of take some of my crew also that is in my gaming group that I also work with. And so we're going to we're taking some of the stuff from the Rise of the Drow and Rise of the Drow after the fall and putting it into a fashion that you can play the Drow, but when you roll up your character, you're essentially randomizing. A lot of these rolls are random, so you're getting this randomly generated character with all these different strange traits and perhaps different house backgrounds. So one player might be from one house, one might be from a different house, one might be from no house, or perhaps they were even a slave before this. And so everyone has to figure out, well, how do we all work together when we all have all these ulterior motives that exist from our past, but yet we're trying to cling just to basic survival at this point, and we're trying to claw our way back to relevancy in the Underdark, which the Drow have never had this experience before, because the Drow have always been at the, the utmost highest point, the kind of the main predators, or the main you know people, the main race, and kind of in charge of everything that happens in the Underdark. Perhaps, although the Illithids may beg to differ, but but still, they've always kind of been this pinnacle of power in the Underdark, and now they've fallen. So you get to play these fallen Drow trying to cling to basic survival and just play in this world that is absolutely brutal. And as you go through it, you could end up getting mutations. You could end up turning against one another. There's a lot of perils and pitfalls as you go along, and a lot of strange and twisted, odd places to explore with mutated beasts and creatures that are just absolutely disgusting and horrible. So yes, that's essentially what DROW BORG is.
So let me give the viewers and or listeners a bit more context about what's happening here. So um, uh, Jonathan is part of AAW Games, which has put out probably the most popular thing they put out is the Rise of the Drow campaign, which is not directly tied in. It's a third party Dungeons and Dragons fifth edition campaign where, oh gosh, it's huge. It's level
Mm-hmm.
1 to 20. Am I correct
Yep.
about that?
Yeah, levels 1 through 15 through the adventure. If you explore all of the campaign setting content, all the extra content within the book, it can take you all the way to level 20. So it's over 550 pages, and it's like everything you need is in the book. The adventure, the campaign setting, the bestiary, everything. I've heard professional DMs run this adventure 10 times, and they said every time they run it, it's completely different than the other times, which is why they enjoy it, since they're like, a lot of these pro DMs are actually paid to run these games, but a lot of times they'll run the same adventure. It's the same thing over and over again. They said every time they run this thing is totally different, because when you get into the Underdark, it's a giant sandbox, and we've given you all of the toys and all of the cities and all of the people and cultures to play with, and it's just absolutely unreal. I mean, I don't even know how many years went into this thing. It's been revised so many times until we got this collector's edition. I would say there's probably a good, 12 years of content put into here by a team of roughly 35 people, maybe more, maybe 40. But a
Hmm.
lot of work went into this book. So it is definitely our flagship product, and it always gets 5-star reviews on every platform. So if anyone has any doubts about it, just feel free to read the reviews or ask a friend or post online, because people do have a lot of rave reviews about this book, and it's something that if you don't have, I definitely would suggest getting it, especially during a time when it would really help out a lot of third-party publishers. And also know that when you support AAW, you're supporting not just myself and my family, but also all of the artists, the authors, the editors, all of that. The money always goes back into continue to create more creative work. So you're supporting a full team of creatives who do this, and we live all over the world. So a very diverse community that we have.
Yeah, and I recommend anyone that wants to run an Underdark campaign definitely check out Rise of the Drow. It's huge, and there's so many different stories and things you can do in that campaign. It's huge. It's in my opinion, one of the best third party adventures out there.
Thank you.
I honestly, and hopefully it's not sacrilege in saying this, but I think even some of the modules that Dungeons and Dragons themselves have put out their own company doesn't rival to what you have here. And I'll put
Thank
a
you.
link somewhere because I know we did an interview about that some time ago. So I'll
Yeah.
put a link somewhere so anyone to check that out. They want to know more information about it.
Yeah,
And
and the other thing to point out too is that the Drow, it originally, I believe it came from like don't quote me on this, but I believe it was perhaps Norse mythology, where it came from Thro, and then became Dro, and then became Drow. But Gary Gygax had adopted it, and Queen of the Demon Web Pits, and all these other adventures, Descent into the Depths of the Earth, Shrine of the Quotoa. That's where I was first introduced to the Drow. And so I like to also, I always like to bring up like how I came to find it, So it was like playing those early modules, and even the Descent into the Depths of Earth was my very first AD&D first edition module. And I remember having that as a kid. and it was kind of like it's become nostalgic. It's like I have all these different modules, but that's kind of one of my nostalgic modules, because it's when we first kind of really start to get glimpses into the drow, outside of Against the Giants. So from that carried into more of the modern drow mythology it's developed over time. We've obviously had we've had Ed Greenwood in the Forgotten Realms. We've had numerous authors work on the drow content, whether it was for novels or for game content. And then, of course, R.A. Salvatore, took it to another level and really brought drow into modern culture, and with his stories of Drizzt and so on and so forth, right? So I always like to pay homage to those that pass the torch to here, and I think that's what we did. Is when we were developing it, we weren't thinking so much as like, how can we create something to rival this or to be better than that, but how can we take all these bits and pieces, including the stuff from like the Dungeoneer Survival Guide and all of this stuff that came before us, how can we take that and take it as influence to create something new that we know can be kind of like the one volume that if you're going into the Underdark, you can grab that book. And even if you're not going to run the adventure, there's just so much content in it, you can take it and run games with it and just piecemeal it into your own games if you wish, and that's kind of what our goal was with that one. And I feel like we did that. And I'm really proud of everyone on my team, because there's no way we could have done it, any one of us alone. It takes a village. So I also pay respects to all of those people that worked on the project with us. They added in all of those bits of flavor, all those seasonings that brought it to where it is. So, yeah.
And just to be clear, both Rise of the Drow and DROW BORG, when it comes to the lore, even though it's heavily inspired by what Dungeons and Dragons have done with it,
Mm-hmm.
with Drow, this is your own thing. This is your own. You
Yes.
have that's your own set of gods. You have your own set of culture and locations.
Of course, yeah. We don't use any intellectual property by Wizards of the Coast. So, for example, if you don't like the name Naraneus, the Spider Goddess, and you want to use Lolth in your campaign, you can do that. If you don't like that the city is called Holoth in our game, and you want to call it Menzo Branzan, you're welcome to do that as well. So, we wanted to have it in such a way that you could utilize our world of Aventir and delve more into our cultures, our civilizations, and how they all interact, or you can just reskin it and put it into the Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or whatever campaign setting that you're running, even if it's your own world. So we want to leave it open enough to that, because we're also all dungeon masters, and we know how much we appreciate it when other publishers put out stuff that we can easily reskin or pick, plug and play into our own worlds as well. So.
Hmm. So DROW BORG, it sounds like you hit the right tone when it comes to the post-apocalyptic feel of the setting.
Yes.
So, but what what can you be in DROW BORG?
Yeah. In DROW BORG, the primary, this is kind of our thing with this, is like with DROW BORG and with Rise of the Drow After the Fall, which we could talk about later in another show. It's like our sequel to Rise of the Drow. You this time are playing the Drow. In the past, people said, oh, I love Drow. I want to, I want to run Rise of the Drow. Do I get to be Drow? That's what I want. Most of the people, like 90% of people, are, I want to play the Drow. So we're like, okay, let's have us play the Drow. Let's play the Drow, but let's play the Drow in such a way that we are having a brand new experience, an experience outside of the things that we've already read in the novels or that we've seen in the Forgotten Realms or even in our Rise of the Drow book. Let's go to a place that is a lot darker. Let's go into and go ahead and take on the grimdark that is so prevalent in a lot of these OSR and especially like Mork Borg type products, where you're playing in a very dark setting where things are bleak and the future doesn't seem very happy or very, your chances of survival are very slim, which makes it all that much more exciting when you actually have a victory or when you're able to survive in an adventure even. So yeah, in this particular instance, you're going in as Drow, and after the fall, we have the idea of Drow or Driders, or that's essentially what we're going to have in that adventure, which is for 5e. But in DROW BORG, we're focusing more on the Drow themselves, and so we're really sticking to the Drow. Now that doesn't mean you can't become something else, because as I said, there are these mutations. So there is the potential that as you're going along, you could potentially mutate into something else. And the way that works is a lot of the rolls when you roll, for example, a skill check or something, depending on where you are and what's around you, like so let's say you're in close proximity to some of these venom pools, this venom that's leaked out from the demi-plane of venom and now exists in the prime material plane. if you're near these things or even in one of these things, your chance of a mutation increases exponentially. So what happens is when you make a roll in this game, you get something called, if you fail your roll, you get something called a venom point. You can then use, you can get up to 4 venom points, and if you don't spend them, you'll automatically get a mutation once you've achieved over 4. If you spend a venom point, you get to reroll. But if you fail in that reroll, then you obtain a mutation. And again, the mutations can be good and bad, but ultimately, if you end up getting a certain amount of mutations, you essentially turn into a monster. You don't lose your character at that time. You just are a monster, which means that you probably will turn on the party at some point because you're a lot more primal, you're a lot more instinct driven, you're a lot more going to be true to the mutated thing that you're becoming rather than the drow that you once were. So you do get to play drow in this game, but there's a potential you can mutate into a drider. You could end up being some kind of like weird, culmination of the two. For some reason, my mind's going back to what was that freaky horror movie from like the 80s, like The Fly or whatever, starting to grow all these weird eyeballs and strange appendages, and start twitching and, like what's going on? What's going on with Trelldog over there? There's something not quite right about him today. Ever since he woke up, he just keeps twitching, and I think he has an extra eye coming out from the side of his head. I don't. You sure he's all right? It's like. So there's a lot that could happen. So it's and again, character generation DROW BORG is a lot of it's random, and like some of the other OSR games or even like Dungeon Crawl Classics, I got one of the box sets back there behind me. There's something very fun about sitting down at a table, rolling some random dice, and now here's your character. It's this culmination of all these bits and pieces. And some of the things might make you stronger than others, and some might make you weaker. But what I found at the table during playtesting, and I got to playtest this again with our, we got to do a really fun alpha build playtest with our game masters who were running games in the AAW games room at the JW Marriott Ballroom for Gen Con. And so after hours, I had the guys all meet me. And so we had this table. And when I say guys, I mean guys, girls, whatever, but I call everybody guys. So we all met and we got to play an alpha build of DROW BORG that I ran for them. And it was just fantastic because it really did work out in such a way that when people created their characters, all these people had different strengths and weaknesses. It just ends up that way, randomly happening. And so you might have a couple of people end up kind of the same. Maybe these are the two scouts and they kind of always end up towards the front, but that's fine. It's like, then you'll have a party that's a little bit better about scouting things out or what have you. But it's been very interesting because some playtests end where, 2 or 3 party members die, and other playtests end where everyone's still alive, despite the fact that 3 or 4 of them all had 1 hit point, which I just couldn't believe. I'm like, how in the world did we get through that whole game where you 4 had 1 hit point and none of you got hit, but all the other people did? It's like, because in this kind of a game, if you get hit and you take 1 damage, you're dead. It's like you hit 0 hit points. It's just like AD&D first edition. That's it. Character's dead. Time to roll up a new character, and maybe we'll find a way to fit you in up here in the next kind of scene that comes along. But but yeah, it's definitely it's going to be interesting. And the first adventure that we'll probably be doing with DROW BORG is that we'll have the rules book, and then we'll have the first adventure as probably either a separate soft cover, or we might have like a mini adventure, kind of like our mini dungeons one shots, like 1, 2, or 3 of those in the back of the book, so that you could have like, here's rolling up a character, here's how to do all this, and then here's a few short adventures for the GM to run for you. We're still back and forth on that because, like I said, the Kickstarter is coming up. It's going to be in October. So we're still toying with how we want to put out the final books. But needless to say, the very first adventure is going to be called Dungeon of Tolgoreth Tower. And so you're exploring the dungeon of this tower I spoke of, where the matron Maelora, when her tower imploded and collapsed and all these pools of venom burst out into the city everywhere, you're basically, this kind of like ground zero. This is the epicenter of where everything went to hell. It's like now you're going into the middle of all this chaos and trying to figure out how to perhaps pull some relics from there that can help give you some kind of an advantage to, reclaim your rightful place as a drow in the underworld. So.
So it sounds like DROW BORG will use the same rule set that Mork Borg uses. Am I assuming correctly?
Our plan with it is to have it be compatible with Mork Borg, but yet still be unique enough to have its own flavor and system. So you won't necessarily have to have the Mork Borg book to be able to play DROW BORG. You'll still be able to just get DROW BORG and play it independent of Mork Borg. But that said, we are going to have it be compatible. I'm not sure yet. We're still torn on the abilities. We may have our own names for the abilities, but yet they will have their equivalent from the Mork Borg system, so that they'll still be compatible. But essentially, it'll be a very easy to bring over a character. Like if you're going to roll up a character from Mork Borg and you want to bring it over, you could do such a thing. But that said, ability score generation, we actually are doing something similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with Death in Space at all, but in that particular system, when you roll your ability scores, you roll a die and then another die to subtract from your initial die. So like in DROW BORG, when you're rolling like your vigor, you're going to roll a d6 and then you're going to roll a d4 and subtract it from the d6, and that gives you your modifier. And yes, you could end up with negative ability scores if you rolled your d6 and you only get a 1, and then you roll a d4 and you get a 2. You're gonna end up with a negative ability score. But what I found is that it tends, through the randomization, it tends to balance out. So you may end up with some ability scores that are -2 or -3, but you also end up with some that are +1, +2, +3. And then, of course, there's things that you find in the game, like relics, which essentially are magic items, that can give you additional boosts to certain things. So you may find some kind of a relic that's a ranged weapon that, fires some kind of a poison bolt or something, and that may give you an extra +1 when you use it. So, and things in this game, like a +1 is a huge advantage. It's not seen, and like, games like 5e +1 is like, yeah, that's great and all, but it's not that exciting. But this game is like, yes, I got something that's a +1. I'm not just using this bone shiv that I like made and it does 1d4 damage I'm trying to stab with. I found actually a sword or something that does 1d6 plus an additional damage. This is pretty badass. So the small
Hmm.
things become much bigger in this type of a game, right?
Hmm. Viewers and readers, in case you've never been exposed to Mork Borg is a very basic. I guess you could put it label it as a basic role playing game where you can make characters very quickly. You don't have a lot of hit points, so it kind of resembles old school role
Yeah.
playing. And it's a high fatality count in Mork
Hmm.
Borg. You will not, the world's ending, and you may not even survive to see the end of it. Um, so the question I want to ask you is that Rise of the Drought is a fifth edition game for Dungeons and Dragons, but DROW BORG is its own thing, similar to Mork Borg. What made you decide that okay, this story you want to tell or this game you want to make, it has to be done this way instead of being like another fifth edition source book?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it in a way, it was kind of serendipitous that at this particular juncture, rules light OSR style role playing games are very in right now, and people are very interested in playing them. Not only that, but they're smaller, they're easier to print, they're cheaper to print, they're easier to get in people's hands, especially during a time where you're dealing with tariffs and all this other craziness. It's like this is a way for you to quickly get a new role playing game without spending a fortune and be able to sit down with your friends and immediately start rolling up characters and play a game the very night you bring the book to the table. And there's something really fun about those rules light games where you can sit down and say, okay, we're playing a new game. Everybody bust out your dice, roll, roll, roll. Okay, here's the cool stuff your character gets. Here's you, and like pass the book around. We've done this a number of times with some of these different rules light systems, and there's something really enjoyable about that. So it's a totally different experience than 5e, where there might be a lot more buildup and more complexity, and you're starting out as more of kind of a superhero, right? You're not starting out as just like you're just this mundane character like in a lot of the OSR games. You're starting out as more of a compelling superhero type character that is expected to live through multiple sessions and possibly the entire campaign. Whereas DROW BORG, you're not even guaranteed you're going to survive to see the next session or even halfway through the session, right? So, which makes survival all that more exciting, and combat very exciting when you don't know if you're going to die, from this enemy that's coming at you. So, what worked out really well and serendipitous was that we were coming out with Rise Draft of the Fall, which places you in the role of these drow in this 5e adventure, where you are now in this city that is controlled by the coalition of quote unquote good guys who are now like having you worship a new god, having you kind of serve them, and now you're like relearning how to live life in this new world you live in. And so we thought, well, this is a great time to also bring about something that is this rules light kind of a game of throwing it. What if we took it even deeper and darker and not even worry about the coalition, but just have it like the city's absolutely destroyed. Nothing really survived except for a few locations here and there, maybe some relics scattered about the ruins or in some of the dungeons, but you're living in this post-apocalyptic ruin of a drow civilization, and how to figure out how to kind of claw your way back to relevancy in the Underdark, uh, through just primal means, very basic means, but also through all these strange mutations. And how do we keep from becoming monsters ourselves, and and what separates us from humanity and just essentially being crazy primal monsters. So it was kind of serendipitous in that those two projects kind of like, you know came together at that time. And so we recently did the Kickstarter for Rise of the Draft of the Fall, which did really well and has a whole series of miniatures and is going to be a really fun game with lots of infiltrations and lots of political, a lot of political stuff, because you're all playing Drow from different houses. You have to figure out how do we work together towards one goal. But DROW BORG just takes it even darker. It takes it even darker. It takes it deeper. And at the same time makes it rules light so that you can have a quick, fun session at the table without having to devote, weeks and weeks and weeks to a campaign, or months even, right? So, because sometimes it's nice to be able to have a little break. And even fan of the Drow that maybe you're playing after the fall could go play DROW BORG and have a completely different experience than what they're having over here with the 5e after the fall. So that's kind of how those two came together.
Hmm. So another thing about the Mork Borg books is that I think they're the only series that I know of that are very, very intensive, uh, very art intensive.
Yes.
Every page could be almost like an album cover of some sort.
Yep, exactly, like a
Um,
metal album cover.
so are you doing the same thing with Drawborg? Which, by the way, I have to say I love this cover. It has it has that old school like horror movie poster vibe, and a little bit of a creep show comic books vibe
Yep.
as well.
Yep. Yeah, no, we're leaning heavily into the kind of the dark angle with this book. As you see with the cover, we're going for kind of like a matte black with kind of this toxic sludge green for the venom, right? So you're going to see a lot of blacks, a lot of neon greens in the artwork within this book. You'll probably see also some black and white art, of course, because it's just classic and iconic. The hope is, and I've been in talks with this artist for a long time now, who happened to do art on these tarot cards that I happen to use on a regular basis, and that my stepdaughter had purchased for me in Seattle. When I saw them, I just fell in love with the art, and so she bought them for me. And it turned out the artist is here in Seattle. He attends a lot of conventions all over the world and does some really wild stuff, some really cool stuff, and all with black and white, or maybe black, white, and one other color. So my plan with this is that I'd like to work with him, and him and I are going to get together actually in person to talk a little bit about what kind of an angle we want to go with the art. But I do want it to be very, very art intense. But I also at the same time, like, I don't want to take away from the content on the pages. So it has to be like, this has to complement that, and that has to complement this. They have to like be one and the same. But yeah, I do want in all of our books actually that we've been doing for a while now, I want every 2-page spread to kind of be its own experience, so when you open those pages, you get some kind of a feeling from them. So yeah, the hope is to really make this a very art intense book, again, without detracting from the actual content within the book. So yeah.
So this will be coming out to Kickstarter, hopefully sooner than later.
Yep, October
Um,
2025.
um, what are your plans for the Kickstarter exactly? Are you planning to have like stretch goals or anything like that?
We may, but honestly, in this particular instance, I think that less is more. And so if we do any stretch goals, they'll probably be in the form of things like quote unquote mini dungeons, or like our one shots that we already do for like 5e, Pathfinder First Edition. And I should mention here too that we've recently started we're about to start releasing some mini dungeon one shots for Shadow Dark. So watch our website, aawgames.com, for that. But that said, if we do stretch goals, they'll probably be in the form of those one shots, because DROW BORG is going to be a perfect game where, like, if you're just starting out, it's a great game where maybe you go, well, we want to play the Dungeon Tolgorth Tower, but we're still kind of learning the rule set, and we want to have some characters that could like die off early just for fun, and we want to kind of try it out. A bunch of one shots is a great way to do that. And also, if we have one shots that kind of like increase in difficulty, then if the GM continues with their adventures, maybe creates their own, or they want to add on or string some together, they could do that. So stretch goals will probably be in that kind of a form, but I don't want to create anything that's going to slow down the actual print and publication of the book, because in my experience is the more you go crazy with stretch goals and you keep adding to the book and adding to the book, it further delays the process of getting the book and the files done in layout and off to the printer to get printed and then in the hands of backers. And I'd rather have this get in the hands of backers sooner rather than later. I also hope to be able to at least give them like the beta version so they can already start rolling characters and kind of playing with things and playing with the toys before we actually print the book. I always try if I can to get like the early builds out, especially the PDF. And then this one being a new role-playing game system riffing off of Mork Borg, I want to make sure that they're able to get their hands on the content quickly. So those really hardcore fans of AAW or of DROW in general or the Mork Borg system can get in there and start creating characters and start playing some of these games before maybe even all of the artwork and the cartography is all completed. So that's the hope. But I do want to keep it more streamlined and simple. I want to keep this like really like, okay, this is simple. We're getting a PDF or I'm getting PDF in a print book. And if we hit these certain stretch goals, we'll start creating additional mini dungeon content that maybe is like downloadable or something like that. Just, download a black and white print, you're good to go. It's ready to run. So something like that.
And is it going to be similar to the other Morkbook books, where like in the sides of the book,
Yes.
page count?
Yeah, we're going for the smaller size book, and the page count, keeping it like under a certain amount of pages. And the reason for that is, again, if it's cheaper to print, then it means we can have a lower price point for our backers. And right now, with the way the economy is in the world, is there's not a lot extra. People don't have a lot of extra spending money, So it's like if you want to get something, you want to get plain, and we want you to have it too. The best way to do that is to get it into a form that is a lower cost, but yet does not. We're not going to like skimp on the content. We're not going to skimp on the quality of the artwork or any of that. We're simply putting it into a smaller book, so it also goes on your shelf with your other OSR rules light systems, but it has its own like look and appeal, and also has all of the content that you need to run the game within it. So it's like we're going for quality on the content, quality on the print job, just making it a smaller book so it's cheaper to ship and cheaper to produce, therefore making it easier to get into the hands of people worldwide, because shipping and handling has also become astronomically expensive. Just ask any Canadians that are trying to get stuff from the US or vice versa, or practically any of the countries. It's like, but seriously, across the border, it seems ridiculous. I'm in Washington State, and I'm like, why does it cost me, a fortune to send something to somebody in BC? They're right there. I might as well just drive up there and mail it from across the border. So the goal is to, like I said, keep this down so that everyone worldwide can get their hands on it without breaking the bank. So
let's talk about the monsters that you might find in this book. Did you have to create anything is new? Can people expect new monsters or variations of things?
yes, definitely. DROW BORG is going to have its own monster section. And most of the monsters some of them are things you might remember from like various games you've played in different role-playing game systems in the past. You might see some familiar faces, but that said, those things have been mutated by venom, and they have been twisted and become these like twisted, nasty monstrosities that are like just a mere shadow reflection of their former self. So there's going to be a lot of very strange creatures, things you've never seen before, and then things that you might go, wow, that looks kind of familiar, but it's very something's not right. Something's really not right, and it kind of gives you the chills. Because there's going to be some very very odd creatures. I don't necessarily want to reveal all of them just yet. You can look at the cover right there to see a few kind of samples of things. There's some pretty nasty undead drow right there staring at you. There's also some drow that are addicted to this new drug as well, that have gone kind of crazy and are running around the catacombs. You also have driders that have been mutated into these just absolute monstrosities. And then these things called zemis, which are these kind of like blob-like, slithering kind of creatures that also have these weird kind of spider leg-like appendages that come out and somehow have the heads of statues or the faces of different statues that represented perhaps drow from the past or perhaps some of their deities, and the faces are kind of like the stone is stuck onto this toxic goo, and it even moves and the mouths open, and they're bathing in these toxic pits of sludge venom, and occasionally if you start to disturb them, they start to rise up out of the pit, and these huge legs come out, and there's like, oh crap, like these guys mean business, and they're like boss monster guys that you could potentially encounter as you're a level 1 character, but you're going to have to run like hell because there's no way you're going to be able to fight this thing. So lots of very weird, twisted things in this book.
That's really awesome. Is there anything else about this book that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share?
Just the character generation. I know I said this before, but the character generation is very fun. And one of the things that we also have is, instead of like magic spells, we have something called powers. And the powers that you can get, some characters may start with them depending on how high your psyche is. Some characters may start with no powers. And as the game goes on, mutations may give you powers, or you may also gain powers through other means, that usually have to do with the story. And the powers allow you to do something that other characters cannot. And it's kind of like a magic-like ability. Most powers, unless stated otherwise, you can use once per day, essentially. Some of the powers may say you can use them 3 times per day. But they're like magic spells, except for the fact that you don't go through and choose like, oh, I'm a wizard and I'm going to go choose my spells. It doesn't work like that. So the powers that you end up with may be very unique, not only between you and the other characters, but by the game that you're playing. You might play a few sessions of DROW BORG, and then characters, maybe you have a TPK, they all die, or you finish that and you want to make a new session or a new game of DROW BORG and start over and play in some different adventures. The new characters you create may have completely different powers that you haven't even seen before. And I actually encourage people not to read all of the powers in advance and to read them as they're creating their characters, even the GM, because it makes the powers seem all that much more mysterious. It's not like, oh yeah, that person's just casting magic missile again. No, it's not like that at all. It's like that person hears whispers all the time, or that person sees spiders climbing all over them, but they're also able to somehow communicate with these trapped spirits that have trapped between the prime material plane and the demi plane of Venom after the spider goddess left. And now these spirits are like, they're there and they have information, but they're also making the person go mad. And so they may have the power to like speak with or hear these people, but yet if they listen too intently and to listen to all of their screaming and all the voices at once, they might go mad. And that's a whole other thing in our game, is madness. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff in here that allows your character to become very unique and to make every game and every time you play it totally different, which is really fun. Replayability is really great in games like this, I feel like.
I will put a link to the Kickstarter below, so anyone wants to check it out, they can do so right away, and they can follow it there. But before we wrap up, AAW Games puts out a lot of different things, and I feel like we haven't even touched about some things they're either planning or have out at the moment. Is there anything you want to share for anyone that's curious about what AAW does?
Sure. Yeah, AEW. So we've been working on a lot of our projects behind the scenes for years now. So Rise of the Draft of the Fall, for example, we already worked on that 3.5 years before we even brought it to Kickstarter. So a lot of our projects are very involved, and we work on them way in advance. And the reason I'm looking up here is I have all these binders up here, and each binder has a different project, and I'm looking up to see which ones I can reveal right now. So, for example, Zine Quest is coming up on Kickstarter, I believe, in February of 2026. We're going to be, for the first time, we've done Mini Dungeon Monthly, which was like a smaller black and white zine, but we're going to be doing a Mini Dungeon magazine, which will be a full color, really high quality, cool magazine, possibly even with like a partially holographic cover and like soft touch cover with great artwork and just like a beautiful book full of one-shot adventures, but also with some comics, some articles on things you can do and add to your games that go along with some of the articles, and have an overarching theme. So Mini Dungeon Magazine issue 1 will be coming to Zine Quest. We're not going to be planning on a regular release schedule with that one. It'll be more of like a crowdfunded magazine that, if the first issue does great, will at some point in the future do a second issue. But we want to make sure and take the time and care to create each issue separate, and then have that be a limited print where, if we make 1,000 copies of it, that's it. You can buy that, and once it's out, that is sold out. So then you have to wait for issue 2. In addition to that, we have Mini Dungeon Tome 3, which are Mini Dungeon Tomes, again, are one-shots. We've put out Tomes 1 and 2. Mini Dungeon Tome 3 would essentially be taking all of the new one-shots that we've created over the past probably year and a half, 2 years, and putting those into a hardcover volume for 5e and Pathfinder 2nd edition. And again, I mentioned we were starting to do some one-shots for Shadow Dark as well, so you can check out our website for those. In addition to that, we have the Red Tree of Grudges, which is a 5e 2024 adventure. It takes place in the village of Rybalka, which is the same place where Rise of the Drow starts, but yet tells a different story. And this tells the story of the prodigal sorcerer Anastasia Leonid, and she is the daughter of the mayor, Mayor Igor Leonid, which if you've played any of our A series adventures or Rise of the Drow, you're probably familiar with Igor. Um, Anastasia is coming home to find out that her mother and father have been divorced. Her mother went off into the wild and has been killed. She's angry at her father. She drives a weapon into the Red Tree of Grudges, manifesting a grudge against her father and setting this maelstrom of chaos off in the Rybalka area, which the characters then have to come in and try and navigate and figure out how to deal with all of these complexities of this family and all the strange evils that are starting to come and manifest out of the dark wood, the nearby forest. And that one we've been putting out for a while on AAWgames.com. And that's for 5e 2024 as individual installments as part of our adventure arcs. And so that's something that's kind of complicated to explain really quick. I'll just show you, like, here's adventure arcs, or these different bricks. And picture a mini dungeons. They're the red brick, right? So those are one shots. All these others represent different aspects of what you might see as like a full adventure, but we create it in such a way that you can break it apart. And if you just want to grab like the one shot, you could do that. If you just want to grab like the tactical or the wilderness content, you can grab that. So we developed it in such a way that you can like plug and play into your game. So the Red Tree of Grudges is not only an adventure, but a whole bunch of bits and pieces that any GM could come in and just grab pieces. Like, I like these wilderness rules, I'm going to grab those. Or I like these new magic items or spells or what have you. You can just grab those. Or you can subscribe to our site and get the new content that comes out on a regular basis. We have a soundtrack for it. We have miniatures. We even have like a canoe, a totem pole, some of the NPCs represented in miniature form. And I know I'm rambling here. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. That's why we've been working on some of the stuff for years, and it's all coming to fruition soon. So we also have a Frost and Fang, an Aventir Arctic Bestiary coming out for 5e. And then beyond that, we have Treasure of Falcon Cove, which we've been working on that for about 4 years now. And that is a game where you are playing kids in the 80s on the Oregon coast. So picture kind of Goonies or like Stranger Things. And you're on the Oregon coast, and there's this shipwreck. There's this old pirate treasure, the shipwreck out in the ocean. And something shifts, something changes, and all of a sudden, reality starts to change, and things that people are imagining become real. And so you roll up these characters, and you're playing kids in the 80s. And so you're rolling up a kid or an adolescent in the 80s, and then you're going to roll up that kid's D&D character. And then that D&D character, through this strange magic that's coming from the shipwreck, starts to actually manifest into very interesting things. And then a story starts to unfold where you're, essentially you're in the United States in a coastal town on the beaches of Falcon Cove and Manzanita down the Oregon coast, just south of Cannon Beach and Astoria, where a lot of the Goonie stuff was filmed. And you're playing kids in the 80s who are now manifesting these powers and becoming Dungeons and Dragons characters to fight this other evil that the bullies and these other characters are accidentally manifesting on their own. So it's a very interesting take, and it's way outside the box, which is AAW loves to do stuff that like it hasn't been done, or take something to another level. So that one we've been working on for a long time, and I'm very excited about it. But we haven't revealed a lot of it yet, other than just a few images. And the reason why is we want to do that one justice, because also one of the storytellers for that one has since passed away, and we want to make sure to capture all the stories in such a way that it pays homage to him and his family and the Oregon coast itself. So we're also including some real world folklore in there, things from like the native tribes. We're also including some actual real events and shipwrecks that have occurred on the coast there, like some of the Spanish shipwrecks going back into history. So that one's going to be a very fun book. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just a few of the projects that we have in the works. So there's lots coming, but AAWgames.com is the place where you can see everything. And if you sign up for a newsletter, we don't spam you. We always send out good stuff and lots of good content you can use for your game. So check that out too.
Hmm. And I have to say, I am really looking forward to After the Fall. I mean,
Yes.
Rise of the Drought is such a huge amount of material in there, and the fact that there's a sequel coming, I wouldn't imagine like how much more content. I mean, wow, 'cause sounds like years upon years of Underdark adventures.
Oh, there's more.
Um,
There's more beyond that. I can't even mention what's beyond that. But let's just say that's just the tip of the iceberg of the Underdark. Like we have a lot more to share, and some of it has never been done and is going to be really, really rad. I just can't talk about it yet because it's in the beginning development phases of kind of phase 2 of all of this.
right, excellent, excellent. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I am too.
Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about DROW Borg,
Yeah,
and
thank you, Manny.
I can't wait for it. And for After the Fall, which viewers and readers, wow, viewers and listeners, stay tuned as we'll get a chance to look at that book and talk deeply about it with Jonathan, hopefully,
Yeah.
in the next few months.
Yep.
Um, and yes, everyone, thank you for watching and listening. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.